Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dais, a podcast about the stories taking place in and around El Paso County, Colorado. I'm your host, Scott Anderson, and today I am joined by Christine Burns and Dawn Montoya from El Paso County Justice Services. How are the two of you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you so much for having us here.
I'm doing well as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it. Before we get started with the conversation, though, I want to quickly add that if listeners are interested in more stories about people doing good in and around El Paso County, or hearing from county leadership about local government priorities and how they operate, you can find additional episodes of this podcast on your podcast platform of choice. To get started today, though, I was wondering if each of you can give me a little bit of background about yourself and how you ended up with Justice Services. Christine, let's start with you.
Well, thank you. I've been with El Paso County since 2011. It is a great place to work. And I started off as the grant analyst for El Paso County and had the privilege to move through some leadership positions and now enjoy the opportunity to serve the community through Justice Services programs here at El Paso County.
Very good. All right. How about you, Don?
Well, I started with El Paso County in 2007. I started at the Sheriff's Office, and how I got involved in Justice Services and pretrial is in 2012. The sheriff actually started a new pilot program for pretrial services, and I was the one that they chose, and it was just one person, and we've just been growing ever since. In 2015, Christine and I teamed up because I got underneath the umbrella of the Sheriff's Office and moved over to El Paso County to ensure that there wasn't any conflict of interests, and we've been growing, and it's just been an amazing journey, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
So what is the role of Justice Services within the community? You mentioned how it started over at the Sheriff's Office. What does it look like now, and how do you help residents here in El Paso County?
Well, Justice Services is more than just pretrial. What we do, is provide quality public services in relationship to supporting individuals who are involved in the justice system. Specifically, we provide community corrections, and we manage contracts for community corrections here in El Paso County. And for those of you, the audience listening, thank you. Community corrections is about providing housing opportunities, and you may know the term halfway house. So for individuals who are coming out of the Department of Correction system or have found themselves involved in the justice system, and community corrections is a sentencing alternative for the courts. We also manage contracts for useful public service, and that's where individuals who are sentenced to do community service work, like 20 hours of community service work as a part of their sentence. And then we have pretrial services, which we're here to talk about today.
Great. So why is pretrial services such an important program within El Paso County?
So pretrial services is very important because it works with ensuring that citizens of our community are being able to ensure that we have public safety. But our role is to work with the courts and the stakeholders to ensure that we maximize release from the jail. We maximize individuals to appear in court. We also maximize public safety. And we ensure that the value of making sure individuals are having the opportunity to be released because of the presumption of innocence. It gives them the opportunity to be able to get home and do what they need to as they prepare for their defense on their cases. And it gives them the opportunity to still stay at work, be able to provide for their family. Because we do know that in many circumstances, if an individual's been incarcerated or in custody for 3 days, we have a 3-day count, and studies show that the longer a person's incarcerated in a pretrial status, that their success decreases, and they have potentially longer sentences if they're convicted. And then, of course, there's the community issues that if they are in there, they're going to lose their job, they're going to lose their housing, they're going to lose, things that keep and support their family, which then in turn turns around and causes, families to have to use public resources. And so it's one of those that it benefits everybody in El Paso County and the community to be able to get individuals out to take care of what they need to.
I think that's a great point, Dawn. I mean, really, Pretrial Services program is here to support the well-being of our community and the safety of our community, while supporting the individual rights of defendants, and it's about civil rights, and providing the information to the courts to make accurate decisions in relationship to those individuals who find themselves in the system.
So I'm curious because you mentioned that this pretrial services specifically spawned out of the sheriff's office, not a part of law enforcement anymore. Is it correct? So how does that relationship look, though? I mean, because it sounds like you are at least involved with law enforcement some. Can you talk to me about that relationship with law enforcement and how that separation exists?
Sure. Just a little bit of background. Pretrial Services has been around for quite some time. The notion of providing information to the court so that they can make sound release or detain positions is not a new concept for us. It was in El Paso County as an administrative department in the late 90s and the early aughts. Then the program was eliminated and returned in 2012 under the auspices of the Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
And so it's been around for a while, but then was discontinued for a while. And then the understanding that this is a really important program to support community well-being, public safety, individual rights within the justice system. So it was within the sheriff's office because it was a resource matter and a willingness to bring it back and a need in our community. We're grateful that the leadership saw the need to have a pretrial services program. So we work with the public defender, the district attorney's office, the combined courts. The El Paso County Sheriff's Office is an extremely important partner for us. And so we're not law enforcement, and we really were never law enforcement in the jail. So Dawn was never really a law enforcement officer, but we work closely and collaboratively with our law enforcement partners.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, I was a civilian employee, and like I said, the biggest thing that the jail was finding was that when they cut the program, it was a big effect on the jail population, and so fortunately, obviously, it was during a recession. There was not very much funding available. So fortunately, the sheriff's office was able to take on that role temporarily in order for that process to get back into it. And then, of course, I said it was a collaboration with the courts and the public defender and the district attorney. And fortunately, I was a part of that, and seeing it grow and expand has just been amazing.
No, I want to talk just a little bit about the growth. The program, when it came back in 2012 under the auspices of the Sheriff's Department and the resources that the sheriffs could provide to it. Again, Dawn with the one individual, and in 2015, and I think one of the best decisions was to move it back under the administration of the county and out of the sheriff's, under the auspices of the Sheriff's Department, simply from my perspective, as Dawn mentioned earlier, that the potential conflict of interest could be seen there. And we started off with Dawn. We went to a few more part-time employees. We expanded into an assessment unit, and more recently we were able to provide the supervision support services. And so we have a strong team and a robust pretrial services program from 2012 to where we are at today.
Very good. So if I were someone who needed to partake of pretrial services. What might that look like for me? Like, how would I interact with the team, and what type of services might I need? I know you mentioned a couple, but in thinking about an individual, right? Like, how might they go through that process of receiving pretrial services?
Well, first of all, what pretrial services does is the first communication with the defendant or individual justice involved is that they're generally in custody on new charges. And so what we do is we work on getting information for each individual that's held in custody, to waiting for their advisement hearing to be told what they're charged with, and all of the information. So we provide information to our stakeholders before that initial hearing, so that way when that individual goes to court, the judge, the DA, the PD, all have the information, and what we provide to them is a criminal history of 5 years. We do what we call as a Colorado Pretrial Service Assessment Tool, which is the CPAT. It's a evidence-based tool that basically gives information about a potential risk for that individual, for how likely they are to make it to court and how likely they are to remain arrest-free. So we provide all of that information. So we get that first bit of contact. Generally, the sheriff's office, fortunately, does a lot of the initial questions and such for that. So we don't always get in contact with that defendant before their advisement hearing, even though we are in the background doing that role for them. And then once the defendant has been advised by the courts, if they're released on a personal reconnaissance bond, then from there, our staff, which is our supervision unit, will generally then meet with them, either generally over the phone or what, to understand that they know what their conditions are, and just provide them guidance on what is it that they need to be successful through this process. Is there some conditions or requirements that they have to meet? We generally refer them to, hey, how do you apply for a public defender? Or, how do you know where the address to the courthouse is? Those kind of factors that we would work with on that.
I think it's, just from the basic level, what pretrial services does is, we assess individuals who may qualify for a personal recognizance bond. We provide information to the judicial officers to support the release or detain decision-making process. And then we provide the compliance monitoring to those individuals who are placed on a bond. And so from the individual's perspective, I really hope that we're providing a safe place for them to feel comfortable, because this might be their first introduction into the criminal justice realm. And again, we here in the United States of America, we truly do believe that you're innocent until proven guilty, but there's a fear. I've been in trouble. I've been accused of a crime. What could potentially happen to me? As Dawn said, people can lose their jobs over it. They can lose their housing. And so our supervision staff are there to help support those individuals through the process, and our assessment unit staff are there to provide the courts with the best information possible to make decisions on an individual's liberty.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things I wanted to ask about. So it sounds to me like pretrial services it's an unbiased service. You're not for one side or against one side.
Absolutely correct.
However, when an individual comes to you, or they may get sent to you, talk to me a little bit about building that trust bridge, I guess, if you will. I would imagine it might be difficult for someone who is, to your point, being first introduced to the criminal justice system. They haven't been through it before. They don't know, what to expect, or who, quote unquote, may be on their side or not on their side, right? So how do you come to them as someone who is genuinely trying to help them provide these services, and have them actually trust you and believe you, right, instead of think, oh, you're just trying to get one over on me or whatever, right? I think when you're in that headspace, it could be difficult to know who to trust. So how do you build that bridge with them and build that trust to let them know that you really are out to help them, really?
Well, I know it sometimes is hard to build trust with our clients because, obviously they've been through the system, and in some aspects, sometimes they view us as being part of that that system. But it's just a matter of us just communicating with them and reminding them that we're a neutral, transparent entity that is there to provide them assistance. And a lot of times our staff have to do motivational interviewing to kind of get to the understanding of, maybe there's a reason why they were arrested that maybe we can kind of address, we have individuals, let's say, for example, are on a domestic violence offense and they are required to vacate their home. And that's a very hard and difficult situation to be told to do. And so what we would like to do is just kind of explain to them, this is what you need to do is trying to, apply for getting a keep the peace order. This is what we can, guide and, give them understandings of, hey, you may have a protection order. This is where you would need to refer to it to ensure that you are not violating it without knowing. So it's kind of building those. Obviously, we have individuals that are on traffic offenses that cannot drive. So we can say, hey, we understand that you have transportation issues. How about some free bus passes? Or, fortunately now we have free bus rides for the next month or so, then till the end of this month. So we'd say, hey, you guys are welcome to, you don't have to worry about paying for transportation for these few months. But we try and work on seeing if there's those barriers and trying to get them to understand and give them opportunities to overcome those barriers.
If we look at what El Paso County really stands for and what we're about in pretrial services and throughout our staff, we just want to make sure we're providing consistent quality public service, and that's quality public service to the individuals who find themselves in the system. And if we remain consistent and service focused, we can gain their trust. We are transparent in our efforts, and we work really hard to collaborate with them, to support them in the process, to get them through to the really two main purposes. We want them to get back to court, and we want them to not have new charges. And when our staff remain consistent and providing quality service, we gain that trust.
Yeah, and I really like what you're talking about from like a trust and transparency standpoint. I think it's important for people who have difficult jobs, and to me, this falls under difficult job category. My wife, she works in social work. To me, that's also difficult job category,
Yes.
right? So when you are in those type of jobs, how talk to me a little bit about your own sort of internal process for keeping what might be your own personal thoughts and feelings out of a situation, because who knows who might come through that door, and you need to be able to serve them the same way you serve anyone else that comes through that door. How are you able to maintain that high quality level of service to our residents while, again, maybe keeping some of those personal biases out of the equation?
I think that's as public servants, as civil servant leaders, that's an expectation. And when we take on these roles to serve the public, and that's all public, law involved in the justice system, not involved in the justice system, that is our role. And so personal bias has to be put aside. And we have to maintain our ability to serve the people, all citizens of El Paso County. And that's the perspective that I take as not only for me personally, but it is what I instill and at least hope to instill in my team. And their responsibility to serve the public, all of El Paso County, and anybody who walks through our doors needing the services that we provide in justice services.
I agree. And I also like the fact, we do remind our staff that they're still innocent till proven guilty. They have not been found guilty. And so we want to ensure that, we're treating them with the utmost respect. And I also we remind ourselves, if we were in their shoes or we had a family member in their shoes, how would we want to treat that individual? And so we put those mindsets in there, and I think that has helped us build a lot of rapport with a lot of our defendants who, unfortunately, some of them go through the system very fast, but then we have some that have been there for a very long time as they go through that process, and we've been able to build those relationships with those defendants.
I like the point when you say the innocent until proven guilty, a core long-term American value. I wish I knew the numbers, but how many of those that are on pretrial, their cases actually just simply don't get their sentence. They're
dismissed.
They're dismissed,
or acquitted, right. And so there are a lot. Unfortunately, we don't get that data, but we do see it on our caseloads a lot, and that's just in our pretrial realm. I know that there are others that are released on other types of means to, as they go through their judicial process or in staying in jail while they go through it, and they're in that same realm.
Right. There's been a lot of research that's gone on about implicit bias, and we've done some trainings with our staff on implicit bias and how we can recognize that and not allow it to become part of what we do in terms of the information that we are providing to the courts. And we want to remain, just providing that quality information to the courts. And so providing trainings to our staff, recognizing that there are such things as implicit bias, and not letting it intrude upon our process. I think it's really important.
Yeah, no, that's very good. I'm glad that you shared all of that. So are there certain criteria that exist for people to be able to partake in pretrial services? Is it something that's available to everybody? What does that look like for, again, someone who might be going through that process?
So generally, obviously, our assessment unit assesses individuals when they first are arrested on a new charge. But that doesn't mean that after that advisement hearing that there's nothing that happens. That if the judge deems that person would be successful, or they want to get that individual out, then they can obviously give us the go ahead to put that individual on a PR bond, and they do have to be on a personal reconnaissance bond in order to be with us, and then of course obviously have to be in the pretrial realm. But any time that the courts, the district attorney, public defender want to argue that individual should be or would be successful on it, if they give that to us, then we would definitely take them on and do whatever we can to support that individual.
And then before we get too far more into that information, can you tell me what a PR bond is?
A PR, it stands for personal reconnaissance. Basically, it is a bond with a signature, and basically it is a non-monetary bond. It just basically is a signature that says, hey, I'm going to make my court date, I'm going to do what I'm ordered to do, and they don't have to pay any upfront cost. There are other types of bonds. There's a cash bond that would require them to pay the full bond amount up front. And then there's also a cash surety property, which they may be going to a bonding agent, or they may secure property with the courts in order for them to be released. But obviously, both the cash surety property and the cash bond have monetary means to them, which a lot of our defendants in our community aren't able to do. So the personal reconnaissance bond gives them the opportunity to be able to be released and continue doing what they need to do.
That's kind of where people talk about bond, people talk about bail. Mm-hmm. There's some confusion that can be in light of there. And so, when Dawn was talking about the cash bond or the surety bond or the personal recognizance, with the cash bond, there's a bail amount set, and they have to post that full bail amount in cash with the court, or with the surety bond, they have to do a promissory note, and really what happens is if they don't appear in court, they could lose that bail amount. And with the personal cognizance bond, as Dawn said, it's signatory, and that they're saying, I'm going to show up to court. I'm going to, as the conditions of the bond, those are the important factors. But understanding that slight difference between the nuance of bail versus bond.
Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned a little bit before, this to me qualifies as a difficult job. What is the most challenging aspect of working within pretrial services? And both of you might very well have a different answer, so let's take this one at a time. Dawn, for you, what's the most challenging aspect?
Well, I think some of the biggest challenges that our staff run into is the need to be able to reach our defendants. Unfortunately, we have a lot of unhoused individuals and individuals that don't have phones. So we work to try and find different ways for the individuals to be able to reach out to us. We work very closely. Obviously, they should be contacting their public defender, their attorney, so we try and work closely with their attorneys to try and overcome those hurdles. But I think that would be the biggest challenge that our staff may have. But of course, we also have to look at it in the aspect of the defendant themselves. If they're required to check in and do different aspects and they don't have that phone, or they don't have an address where we can mail a court date reminder to and such. So once we are able, we've been able to get if they have access to maybe going to the library, going to the internet, they can check in on our website. They can, some of those individuals have emails that they can, again, go to the library and check. So we found some different ways that we can assist with overcoming some of those challenges. And then, of course, once we get in touch with them, we do find, that if you, even come into our office, we can provide, bus passes. We can, we always give them bottles of water, and we even give them toiletries, if they needed those type of things. So it kind of, again, builds that rapport and gives them the benefit of being able to come in, so we can try and overcome a few of those hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree with Dawn. As a community, as a county, as a local government, and providing the best we can in quality public services, we truly believe that we provide essential services at a cost-effective method. And at Pretrial Services, we do that, and we do it well. We have a great team. And so what we have to do is we work collaboratively, and we know there are some barriers that defendants can face. And if we had all the resources in the world, and I had the magic wand to take care of housing and addiction challenges and mental health challenges that our defendants on a personal recognizance bond face, we may be able to reduce some of these, failures to appear rates. But we do a good job. There are challenges that we face. Mostly, it's resource oriented. It could be because of individual personal responsibility. But the team works hard to meet those challenges. We're always looking for innovative ways to provide additional services in a cost-effective manner, and collaboration with our partners to provide these services.
Yeah. So that is the difficult side of it. Let's flip the coin a little bit here. What does a successful day at the office look like for the both of you?
For me, success is being able to work with our population and get them to be successful. And we look at them being successful as obviously having their case resolved in however way, without them having a new arrest or without having them failure to appear. But I think it also comes a little step further. We are providing some additional services to some of our clients that have maybe some substance abuse or substance issues. We are now providing available opportunities for them to go into a sober living, which gives some of them that are maybe unhoused or have those difficulties. And so being able to see some of those individuals being able to find that stability that they haven't had, that it to me makes it all successful. I mean, we've helped several being able to get into that positive environment, get them into being able to get work, stay clean, and be successful. And honestly, the ones that have successfully gone through that sober living program have all appeared for their courts and have all been arrest free. And that to me is a wonderful, successful day.
I completely agree. And it really goes back to the staff. Are my staff being successful? Do they have the tools necessary to do their jobs? Do they feel supported in the efforts that they're making? And then also, are we as a team being as accurate as possible with the information that we are providing to those that are making these liberty decisions for individuals? And then are we providing the best in compliance monitoring services for the courts and working with those clients to the best of our ability? And really comes down to, for me, when we talked about earlier about transparency and collaboration and the system as a whole, are we being consistent and fair? And if every day we're being consistent and fair and honest in our transactions and accurate in our transactions, that is a really good day for me.
Excellent. And then before we wrap up the conversation here, I just wanted to give each of you the opportunity to add anything else that you think would be important for listeners to know.
Well, I mean, I think Pretrial Services has been a wonderful program and a big asset to our community. Again, it's getting people out of jail. It's getting people to be able to take care of their situation. They're in a difficult time, and I think we provide that support and provide them guidance. And while we're doing that, we're also ensuring that the community is safe, or the community resources aren't unnecessarily being used. So I think we do what we need to do, and it's been a wonderful process for our clients and for our staff.
For me, I would really like the citizens of El Paso County who are listening to us to understand that pretrial services is about personal liberty and us supporting the justice system and our stakeholders in making the best decisions possible, coming from the best place possible in supporting the justice system.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Christine and Dawn. I appreciate you taking the time today and for all the work that you do here in El Paso County and for its residents. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Wonderful.
If you are interested in listening to additional episodes of Beyond the Dais, be sure to look for us on Podbean or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.